they lost their loved ones, you know. So it you know, it's tough.
Now, it looks like Travis Scott decided to finally speak out. Even though he has spoken about the Astroworld tragedy on that one apology video he dropped after it happened, something he's yet to do up until this point is talk about it on an interview. So yeah. Let's talk about it. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably very much aware of the whole Astroworld tragedy that happened early last month in November. A lot of lives were unfortunately lost. People went to this festival to have a good time, just to end up passing away hours later. Ever since the tragedy happened, a lot of things have obviously came to the surface. The story was developing extremely fast, so many moving parts at work, one of those moving parts being Travis Scott. Travis is obviously the face of this entire tragedy since the incident happened at his festival. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits have been filed since the tragedy went down. Aside from that, Travis is the guy who a lot of people have been holding accountable for all of it. Now, yesterday, an interview with Travis Scott conducted by Charlemagne the God dropped. You might have seen it. It's currently sitting at 1.2 million views on YouTube. It's being heavily discussed at the moment all over social media, so let's get into that. First of all, if you haven't seen it, I suggest you check it out so this video makes a little bit of sense. You don't have to watch it to follow along this conversation though. I'll try my best to give context here and there as we're going along. I digress. Now, this interview is a pretty big moment. I can see why this interview is stirring up so many conversations. I mean, at the end of the day, Travis Scott is in a very sticky situation. He's the face of this entire thing. The amount of press surrounding his name post this tragedy, it's insane. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think Travis was ever gonna do something like this, at least not so soon. That's something a lot of people have been bringing up. Since he's the person who's the face of this entire thing, and since he's facing a lot of litigation, which is understandable since people lost their lives, people have been looking at Travis, not expecting him to speak out like this. Regarding that, by the way, even though he did speak out on this interview, one thing you gotta keep in mind is the fact that this conversation he just had with Charlemagne the God, it's not really an open conversation, meaning number one, I think it's safe to assume that Travis Scott's lawyers are not only present during the interview, but on top of that, it's also safe to assume that every single question that was asked was greenlit by his legal team. I don't personally have an issue with that because not doing that would be pretty dumb. I mean, it is an open case. Anyone in his position would do exactly that. I say that to say, as I was watching this interview, that's something that was shining through as I was listening to the conversation that was being had. Travis was tiptoeing around pretty much all the questions he was being asked, presumably for legal reasons. This is the kind of moment where Travis Scott taking accountability for what happened at the festival would mean very bad things for him. I mean, he's already up against hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits at this point in time. It's safe to assume that he's not trying to have more of those coming in. Something else I want to bring up is damned if you do, damned if you don't. Meaning if he didn't do this interview, not much would have changed as far as people feeling like he's the person accountable for what happened, or he's not. Regarding that, by the way, Travis was asked on one part, how much responsibility do you feel like, you hold for what happened? To which he responded with that he has a responsibility to figure out what happened. So no, he didn't take responsibility for what happened, but he took responsibility for figuring out what happened. Sounds like an angle his legal team might have told him to take, and if it sounds confusing to you, by the way, that's because it's supposed to be confusing. Also, Travis didn't once in the interview say sorry. That's something a lot of people have been bringing up. It goes without saying, but him expressing remorse in that fashion would mean bad things for him in the court of law, so I'm not surprised he didn't say sorry. Keeping it real, man, this entire interview was a whole bunch of nothing. I didn't leave this Travis Scott interview feeling like I got some insight into what really happened. I didn't leave the interview feeling like Travis felt for the victims who passed, and if I, who's on the outside, felt like that, I can't even imagine what the families of the victims who passed felt like. Travis did say at the beginning of the interview that he didn't have any intentions with it. I disagree. I think he did have an intention, and that intention was to protect himself. Let's just call it like it is. Do I blame Travis Scott for what happened? No, because I don't personally put this entire thing on Travis Scott. I think he played a part in it, especially considering the fact that raging is a part of the culture of his fan base. However, it's kind of obvious why this interview is a thing. I don't really expect Travis to come on here showing a bunch of remorse, saying sorry, because he is up against a bunch of open cases. I just don't think this interview did too much to help him at all. And also, what's the point of talking about it if you can't be transparent about it? Now, like I said, he's facing a bunch of open cases. I get it, okay, that's standard procedure. But in that case, I would say that silence is a million times better than you even doing this interview. Because at the end of the day, Travis Scott did this interview for his fans. That's the way I look at it. If we get real for a second, he didn't do this interview to try to convince the people who've already made up their minds about his part in the tragedy. With that being said, I'm not sure how this interview is going to play towards his advantage or disadvantage in the court of law. I guess only time will tell. But yeah, Travis Scott finally speaks out. Any thoughts on this? Have you guys checked out this Travis Scott interview that just dropped? If you haven't, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Anyway, I feel like you're gonna have at least something to say about it, so yeah, drop it in the comment section below, and yeah, definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.